synthesis of information and inspiration. I'm your host, Joe McClane. So good to be on with you. Coming up at the top of the hour, we will say goodbye to the radio audience and we'll stay on the live video feed for the after show where you get to drive the conversation and talk about whatever you want to talk about. We can talk about our weekend or we can talk about Sound of Freedom. Have you seen it? I'd love to get your thoughts on that. But I also want to share with you an interesting conversation I had with someone I go to church with. You're not gonna find it in the headline news, but I find it utterly fascinating. It's related to oil and gas, so that's in the after show. You can find the details or watch that live on our website if you just go to thestationofthecross.com/ACT. That's thestationofthecross.com/ACT. Kimberly Begg is our guest, though. She has a book out called Unbreakable: Saints Who Inspired Saints to Moral Courage is that title. Again, tanbooks.com is the website. We'll link to it in the show notes. Kimberly Begg is an attorney, a wife, a mom, homeschooler, educator. She sits on many boards. She's an amazing lady, and she's on with us now. Now, let's talk about this aspect that I find really very fascinating about using the lives of saints. Something I love to do when I give talks is use the lives of saints and sinners to motivate us towards the sainthood. Now, I feel like the clock is ticking on society as a whole, but especially at my time and my opportunity as just a dad and a husband to do what I'm supposed to do while my parents are still under my roof, that clock is most certainly ticking. And for most parents, they send their kids off to college and they come back leaving the faith. They come back more like the secular world around them than they do like Catholics who are destined to be saints. This book seems to address that. Tell us how.
The formative years, the early years in a child's life are very, very important. So the saints in the book, so many of them left their homes actually very early. So Saint Joan of Arc left her home as she was 16 years old for the first time when she had to convince that commander of a fortress to give her an escort to get an army to lead to defeat the English. Two of the other saints in the book had to leave their homes early. They were teenage martyrs in the early church. St. Margaret of Antioch and St. Catherine of Alexandria. St. Margaret was actually born into a family where her father was a pagan priest, and when he found out that she had become a Christian, he kicked her out of the house. But so many of the saints early on had to leave their homes, and they were ready for it. And the reason they were ready for it is because they had understood that the most important thing in their life is to do God's will. And that is really what makes the difference between a Catholic out there, a Christian living in the world, who is able to be strong enough to resist the unholy temptations of the world, and those who succumb to it, and those who conform to the evils of society. And those even who not only will keep silent about the evils of sin, but who will join society in celebrating sin. So those formative years are so important. Reading to your children the lives of the saints are so important. Giving them independent reading about the lives of the saint, and then having wonderful discussions on walks, over dinner, over breakfast about the lives of the saints, and asking them questions and asking them to make those connections in their lives. You know, how do you think St. Jose felt when he left at age 14 years old to go join the Cristeros, the resistance army, to the Federales, the state army that was trying to defeat Catholicism, trying to destroy Catholicism in all of Mexico? How do you think he left? How do you think he felt when he left his home and he didn't have the comforts of home anymore? You know, having those conversations, I think, with our kids, and every single day living your faith intentionally and just never forgetting what you're all about, why you were made, and what your purpose is out in the world. I think that's that is what makes the difference.
You know, when I think of Joan of Arc in particular, but also St. Jose Sanchez del Rio, they're so young, so zealous, so incredibly courageous. You know, and most of us are like fence sitters, you know, like even at my vintage, it's like it's they almost shame us into action. And hey, whatever it takes, right? Whatever it takes. I mean, St. Jose was 13 when he went off to join the Cristeros. This is a man who shamed everyone else through his courageous, incredible zealousness for the faith. and stalwart position on never giving up. Even when they tortured him, he never, ever recanted.
Yep.
That is incredible. St. Joan of Arc, at a time when women were seen and not heard, she, as a teenager, would have the audacity. Of course, she was mystically inspired to do so, so praise be to God for it. Mystically inspired to lead France to victory. I mean, like, these are courageous stories, and to think about their age, I think that inspires young people, but I also think it also inspires older folk like myself. Was that part of by design in the book?
It's to inspire parents. Somebody asked me early on who's the intended audience of the book, and I jokingly said, parents. It's the only it's the only audience I know how to write to and write for right now.
Yeah.
Because I'm a Catholic parent myself of 5 children. And I am trying to be focused like a laser beam on guiding these kids on their path to heaven. So I feel like everything we do in our house, our children go to wonderful Catholic schools. We have a wonderful parish. We have a wonderful supportive community of Catholic families that we're a part of in Northern Virginia. Everything that we do is geared towards protecting them from the dangers of the world and making them strong enough. And courage is just one of those virtues that, for whatever reason, we don't talk about enough in the church. And yet we need it every single day. For some kids, they feel sheepish about even making the sign of the cross and blessing themselves and saying grace before a meal. So we try to do little things in our lives so that they are very open about who they are to their friends, to their classmates. I have a son who's lifeguarding right now. He's the only Catholic lifeguard, and they have all sorts of conversations, and I think the other lifeguards probably think that he's fascinating. He's 15, he's confident, he loves his faith, and he defends it well. But making that choice when you leave the house to be as Catholic as you are in the world as you are in church, I think that makes all the difference. It's when you try to make those compromises early on and you try to hide it, then you run into real problems, because then others are naturally going to expect you to go along with it. But when you're Catholic, the second you step out that door and you're living your faith intentionally, it's going to make it easier for you. And actually, others are going to admire you for it. I have a daughter who wears that miraculous medal every day, as I do. And she was in a theater camp a couple weeks ago, and there was another Catholic there. She didn't know she was Catholic, but she said, "I like your miraculous medal." And it allowed them to, create a bond very early on. And I bet you this girl, maybe she'll go out and maybe she'll decide to wear her miraculous medal. But it's the little things that we do sometimes that make the biggest difference.
Yeah. And I think that clock is ticking. I mean, how many parents right now are looking at 17, 18-year-olds and like, they got to go to college, they got to, or else they'll be nothing in life. So we got to send them off to college, and they send them off to these schools to get that paper on the wall, and they come back not Catholic, they come back secular humanists. And they paid top dollar in order to get that paper. But what's that mean for their soul for eternity? Like, this is a real concern, and parents really need to wake up and assist their kids on that journey, preparing them to stand on their 2 feet and face a secular world and do so courageously. So what would be your advice? We have about a minute and a half left here with Kimberly Begg. What would be your advice to parents on how to make those prudential decisions between your kid, their future, but really sainthood being the primary goal of their lives?
Finding Catholic community. If you go to a secular college, which, my children are not going to be going to secular colleges. If you decide for whatever reason that your kids are going to go to a secular college, there are strong Catholic communities on almost every single college. There are also a bunch of wonderful small Catholic liberal arts communities that I think Catholics should be considering.
Yeah, I mean, if only I was 17 again, I'd go to Christendom personally. That'd be my choice. But I'm too old. It's too old. It's too late for me. Anyway, Kimberly Begg, God bless you. God love you. Really appreciate your time today, and the book, Unbreakable: Saints Who Inspired Saints to Moral Courage, over at tanbooks.com. We're going to put a link to it in our show notes, but check it out. Share it with a friend. I think you're going to enjoy it. I know I have so far. Looking forward to the rest of it. Kimberly Begg, God bless you. Have a great day. Thank you for your time.
Thank you so much.
Coming up.